on the News Channel 5 network. This is Open Line.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Open Line. Tonight's topic is one that a lot of folks I know will like to hear. We're talking about the state of education in Tennessee, coming off the governor's State of the State address, where he made big promises for education. And I have Beth Brown here with me, the president of the Tennessee Education Association. Thank you for being here.
Oh, glad to be here, Carrie.
You said you can fill up an hour talking, and I think that we will have lots of phone calls. And I do want to remind people that this is Open Line. This is your chance to ask someone who is knee-deep in our education system about the needs, the wants of teachers, the desires, what our children need. 615-737-PLUS is the number to call. I want to start out by what we were talking about right before the show. The governor's proposing $600 million in new spending in this next budget. It is a proposal. It is not a done deal yet. What was your reaction when he said that?
Well, the first thing that we have to acknowledge is that it will take $1.2 billion to get Tennessee to at least the Southeast region average when we're talking about education funding. So $600 million is a good first step, but it is nowhere what we need in order to actually fund our schools, fund our classrooms, and provide our students with and educators with the resources that they need. That said, it is a good first step. I know that the governor is pledging some monies to go toward teacher salary, which is desperately needed. I think there's still a long way to go, and what that investment looks like, and making sure that that money actually gets to educators' paychecks. And so I also know that the governor is talking about funding for student mental health services, which is a desperate need in our state. I know that I've been teaching for almost 20 years, and the students that are coming into my classroom are having much greater challenges than ever before, and so this is a desperately needed conversation.
And I do want to break that out, because we are talking about $245 million in that initial investment in the trust, so we're talking about big dollars and some big moves elsewhere when it comes to mental health. So we will get to that. Let's start though with that $600 million, and I want to know, where do we stand right now when it comes to the per pupil funding when you look across the United States? Where does Tennessee stand?
Tennessee is 45th in the nation for per pupil funding in our country, and you know, as a Southerner, as a Tennessean, we have a lot of pride in our state. There's not a lot to be proud of about that. You know, some of the things that we can be proud of are some of the education outcomes that are coming out of our schools, our public schools. Despite being 45th in the nation, we do quite well when we are compared to other states in terms of average ACT score. We are 8th in the nation for on-time graduation, and 5th in the nation for on-time graduation for our African American students, despite not having the funding that we need. So we do well compared to other states when we talk about our reading and math scores, our 4th and 8th grade reading and math scores. So there is a lot to celebrate in terms of what's happening in our public schools, but there is nothing to celebrate about being 45th in the nation in education funding and in that kind of investment in our students.
And that education funding, just to break it down to the bare minimum here, where does that money go? We're talking about, this is the money that a school gets per student. It is spent on what across the board?
So it's spent on a variety of things. Part of it does go to teacher salary, part of it goes to other support personnel, school counselors, school nurses, reading and math specialists, classrooms. There are just a lot of components when you talk about per pupil investment, but it's everything from classroom resources to educator salary.
Speaking of salaries, we don't have teachers getting rich in this state. Nobody should think that.
Absolutely not. And I know that one of the conversations that I had with legislators last year as I was entering my first year as the TEA president, you know, legislators were very proud to say, but we've been, you know, pumping in lots and lots of money every year into teacher salary. And I had to look at them very honestly and say, but I didn't get it, and I was truthful.
Right, and they were surprised.
They were very surprised, and I told them, you know, I live and teach in Grundy County. I can travel 40 minutes in any direction and get between a $4,000 and a $10,000 raise in better benefits. And you know, part of the problem in terms of the monies that have been sent out for raises that legislators truly believed were getting to teachers' paychecks, because we have a funding formula in our state state that doesn't provide adequately. It only funds a portion of the employees in the school district, and so the local district has to make up the rest. And when you live in a place like where I'm from, Grundy County, that doesn't have that strong tax base, that money gets spread out because they have to cover their other costs. And then districts are also making difficult decisions about, okay, I have to provide a reading or a math specialist, or I can give a raise, or I can make sure that every school has a nurse, or I can give a raise. And so districts are having to make some really difficult decisions about what to do with that money. And so despite their thought, the monies that the legislators were sending down weren't actually making it to the teachers' paychecks.
And there are some changes, I understand, they're being made to specify this must go to teacher raises, right? Going forward, is that correct?
Well, you can mandate that money goes to teacher salary, but it doesn't mean that every teacher is going to see the raise that's promised. You know, when we walked out of the State of the State address, there were legislators who had seen me beforehand who said, I think you're going to be really excited about what we're going to hear. And then we all heard together that the governor's intent is that every teacher in Tennessee is going to get a 4% raise. Right. That's not actually true, because that 4% is only on that 4% increase is only on the amount that the state is putting in for in the funding formula. When the funding formula is completely inadequate, that means teachers are not going to be getting a 4% raise. When we actually did the math, we took the 117 million, divided it by about the 80,000 educators we've got. You're talking about $28 a week. And that is not the kind of investment, the kind of salary improvements that are going to make teaching a profession in Tennessee that you can afford to do.
What can be done to change that, to change this formula, to actually get the money that I think everybody wants to give these teachers actually into their pockets?
So I think this is really, it's going to have to be a multi-pronged approach, and I think that we're starting to see some of that. First of all, there is discussion about improving the minimum salary schedule, which is critical. You know, we have a real crisis in Tennessee, whether the average citizen understands it. We do not have people coming into the profession at the same rate as they are leaving the profession, and that's for a variety of reasons. You know, we've got some people leaving because of retirement, but we have a lot of educators who are leaving the profession because they simply can't afford to provide for their own families. So bumping up that minimum salary schedule and making teaching a more comparable wage and profession than to similarly educated professions, that will help. So doing some work around the minimum salary schedule is going to be an important piece of improving the problem. We also just need bigger investment, more investment, and we can do that in Tennessee. We've got the revenue to do it without raising taxes, and so the Tennessee Education Association is actively working this session with our partners in the General Assembly, with community allies to make that push. And then so increase, you know, working on the minimum salary schedule, putting more money into education total, but also looking at the funding formula and funding positions and funding at a level that will operate our schools without as much stress on the local school districts. You know, our state is a minority funder. They only fund like in the southeast is like 46 or 49%. So they fund less of the education than any other party.
Interesting. Let's take a pause from our conversation and go to the lines. Johnny is on the line. Good evening, Johnny. You are up first tonight. What's your comment or question?
I just want to say, I watched the news up there. I live south of Nashville. I watched the news and the politics and something like that, but a politician summed it up. I can't remember who it was. He said Nashville ain't got a money problem, it's a spending problem. Just the only thing I can say is they need to be taking care of their police officers, their teachers, and their firefighters.
Yeah. Yeah.
I appreciate your time.
Johnny, thank you very much. And of course, tonight we're not talking about just Nashville, which I think that you have seen when we talked about the budget issues just in Nashville. I think that's where that quote came from. I forget who said that, but we're talking about the entire state, and we're looking at the big picture right now.
Well, and I think Johnny's got a good point when he says we don't have a money problem. We don't. We have the revenue coming in. We have so much revenue coming in that we are putting it into surplus every year. We're not, it is a spending problem because the state is choosing not to spend the money on our public schools. And so I think Johnny's point is well made. It is a spending problem. It's not that we don't have the revenue coming in. We certainly do. And the kind of investment that we need to get our schools out of the bottom 10 in the nation in terms of funding, we have that in our state without raising taxes.
And I think you mentioned in the notes given to me for this, a January report, another $1.2 billion in revenue surplus was added to the state reserves, which is a great thing. We can all say we need it for rainy days, but the state reserves is now up to like $6.7 billion.
$6.7 billion in cash, which means that is money that could be used for anything. It's not for pension system. It's not designated for anything else. We have $6.7 billion just sitting in an account. Well, we have teachers who are spending $500 plus out of their own pockets to pay for their classroom supplies.
Wow. And again, you said to make a difference this year, it would be what you hope for?
We need to get to the Southeast regional average in terms of per pupil funding. Tennessee needs an additional $1.2 billion, which coincidentally is what we took in excess and unbudgeted revenue last year. So we are certainly taking in the revenue to make the kind of investment that we need, and the state economists are predicting that revenue stream is going to continue to be strong. So there's no reason not to be investing in our public schools.
So I wonder, when you're on Capitol Hill and you are lobbying legislators and you say we need this money, here's X, Y, and Z reason, what do they say in return to you to say, no, actually you don't need that much, or we can't give you that much? What's the reason?
Well, I think they look at the proposals that are already out there, things that have already been said, we're going to do this, and looking at the governor's proposal and saying, but we're already going to do that. The problem is this is not enough, and it's not soon enough. And so I think we just have to continue having conversations. We need our community members, our parents, to be having conversations with their representatives and their senators saying, it is time for our kids, our children in Tennessee to be the top priority. We have the revenue, now you need to make the hard decision to do that.
Okay, we have to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about testing from the viewpoint of the Tennessee Education Association. And of course, we're taking your phone calls as well. Go ahead and give us a ring, 615-737-PLUS. Stay with us.